Hello, CO150, welcome back. I come to you today with my little London mug and a trippy Alice in Wonderland t-shirt. So, hope you're in your best comfies for today's lecture. We're going to talk about conferences and making sure that all of your paper really revolves around your audience. So, here we go. Following what is now the usual, we have our course objectives, making sure, again, that we're synthesizing using evidence appropriately in order to be most effective with our arguments. So, part of doing that is in the audience-based reasoning. That means that every move you make in each paragraph is with your audience in mind. For this, you might name your stakeholder directly and exactly tell them what they're going to gain or lose if they follow or don't follow your situation. Is something at risk? Are they going to lose something? Is this going to help them? Or you might write more indirectly, just based on what's important to them, showing why this is a valuable thing, and not necessarily stating, "Dear stakeholder, this is why you will benefit from X, Y, and Z." The synthesis of your sources should also contribute to your ethos and logos. The more sources, the more credibility you have. Logos, we know, is a lot of the time built by data, so having those numbers in favor of your side of the argument will help. And using pathos to humanize that data, kind of coming back to those stakeholder values. So, in your work, consider how you're drafting, even things as like using active or passive voice, drawing and avoiding attention on some of the different issues. Like I mentioned last week, using author tags to build in credibility. I think my example was, according to Captain America, the first Avenger and hometown hero. That tells us who this source is, it tells us why we trust them. You have a lot of this information from your P2 evaluations, knowing why you trust your sources, knowing a little bit more about the publication or your authors. We haven't visited the rhetorical triangle in some time, so again, just to review, when we think about our P3, you of course are the author. You've chosen a specific stakeholder. This is a common question that I've been getting, so I do want to just hone in on this for a moment. Rhetorically, any intended person that's reading the paper is part of the audience. For us, we're defining that audience as the stakeholder. So, when you think about your audience, that's why I've been using these terms almost interchangeably. An audience is a broad group of people. It could be anybody reading the text. We're defining a stakeholder group, a more specific version of that audience. So, instead of approaching students as an audience, you might identify our local ASCSU, the student government here on campus, as a specific stakeholder who represents a general audience of students. Again, make sure that that distinction is clear. Make sure that you are targeting a specific stakeholder with your different claims. Purpose, these come straight from the assignment sheet. You're looking at as a purpose to persuade, to convince, to persuade, and we should be able to categorize who our readers are, who that stakeholder is, and what stance they have on the issue. We've also defined the text. This is a research-based argument. This is a pretty traditional academic assignment. And your context changes depending on what project you're working on, depending on on what your issue is. All of this you can kind of determine and factor into your introduction to help situate your readers, to help situate that stakeholder. All right, to conferences. So, there are 3 options for conferences. This link here is the same one from last week's PowerPoint and the same one that was in the Sunday assignments for week 11. If you've already signed up, that's great, you're done with this part. If not, listen in. So, under the link, you'll have the option for a couple different types of meetings. The Zoom meeting is my first preference. This will give us a chance to video chat. That means that we can share screens, I can see your work, I can walk you through things on Canvas by sharing my screen. It'll be much more easy to facilitate our conference. It'll be much more easy to facilitate our conference this way. If you don't have video capability, if that's uncomfortable or you have privacy concerns, you might choose a phone call instead. This is kind of the second option. This way, we'll share phone numbers with each other. We won't post them publicly so that information isn't available to everybody, but we'll use our phone numbers and I'll give you a call at your conference time. This way we're still getting feedback in real time. We're still speaking directly to each other. Whoops. And that last option is the Canvas submission. This is for if you don't have access to Zoom or a phone call, if you don't have good enough service, if whatever the different restrictions on you that you might have, I still want to be able to make sure that we can check in. So in these Canvas submissions, you'll go through a more reflective process, kind of writing out how you came to your issue and answering those questions specifically. You'll submit this on Canvas, and I'll be able to respond to your questions there instead. This is asynchronous, meaning that there is not a set conference time. You'll just need to submit those materials by Friday. So if you haven't already, follow this link with me, and we'll look at the spreadsheet I've set up for you. All right. On the conference spreadsheet, I have, again, more information here, kind of outlining what's going on, and then times, dates here, your name and section here, thanks to those of you who have already signed up, and I'd outline how we'll be meeting, if you prefer Zoom, or if a phone call is going to work best. There we go. If you don't have access to those, at Canvas Conference, I just want you to confirm that you'll be submitting material on Canvas instead. When we're ready for those Zoom conferences, I do have that link available for you here in the pink box. I'll also post this in a few different places, but I want to have you to have access to it on this schedule. Please do make sure that you set a reminder that you will not miss your conference. I know this is a little bit tricky, so I want to make sure we've taken out as many obstacles as possible. Back to the PowerPoint. Conferences this week are worth 10 points. That's because we don't have a discussion. Instead, we'll be working just from conferences. Full points for conferences means that we have a strong 10 to 15 minute full discussion. It's led by your questions. That means that you're prepared, you're ready to ask those questions. I'd also like you to have access to your outline, your draft, and the audience analyses that we've completed over the past few weeks. These different pieces will help me point you to where you might have already answered some of these questions yourself and make sure that you're using those resources appropriately. A 10-point Canvas submission means that you've answered all of the prompts, you've followed those guidelines, and that you've asked questions, submitted it on time, all that good stuff. So I also have the all the other point values for you as well. So that leads us to our homework. Like I said, no discussion. You should have these materials ready to discuss that I've outlined for you here that I just kind of talked through. In your Sunday assignments, you're going to continue drafting. Ultimately, by the end of week 12, you should have about 3 pages drafted. Please do pay close attention to these page limits, since a lot of you have gone over. The final draft for this project is now 1,200 to 1,500 words. That's the same as P2, so choose your words carefully, make sure that you address those clearly, and practice writing concisely. All right, so hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll look forward to seeing you in conferences. Take care, everybody.